All right, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, as the case may be. It is 12 o'clock by my watch in Chicago, so it's time to begin. Thank you for attending this PowerCast, Rip and Regret, a new study on IBM I and the Z platform by Jeff Winters of Rocket Software. This PowerCast is sponsored by Rocket Software. My name is Ian Carrett. I'm Education Manager for Common, and I appear on your screen as a webcast host. If you experience any technical issues during the presentation, you can send me a message through chat. If you'd like to send a written question to Jeff as the presentation continues, you can also send a chat message, and Jeff will answer your questions as they come at the end of the presentation as time permits. Presenting today is Jeff Winters of Rocket Software. Jeff joined Rocket in 2019 as a Chief Marketing Officer. He has more than 20 years of experience in the IT market and strategy and marketing roles, and was previously Global VP for Marketing and Communication for Pitney Bowes Software Solutions business. Jeff, you're in control. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ian, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are dialing in, either live or when this is a replay, remotely or on demand. So as Ian mentioned, I've been at Rocket Software now as CMO for about a year. And when I joined, one of the things that I questioned and thought about was the whole notion of cloud and replatforming. Obviously, as you'll learn, Rocket Software is about modernizing and helping customers modernize and take advantage of their existing investments in IBM I, IBM Z, most of which you're probably on one or both of those platforms. And I really wanted to understand what the benefits were, what the risks were of either replatforming or modernizing. And so about 7-8 months ago, we IDC to commission a study that answered just that. Basically, if you are considering replatform or you did replatform, why? What were the benefits? And likewise, if you decided or are thinking about staying and modernizing in place, why? What are the costs? What are the ramifications on your end users, on your customers, et cetera? So that's what this presentation is all about. Hopefully it's going to be informative, and there might be a few surprises in there. There certainly were for me and the team as we looked at the data. So, the questions that you have if you're sitting there with a question from the CIO or senior, hey, we should re-platform, have you achieved the right workloads across your infrastructure, whether it's on-premise, cloud, have you looked at private cloud? Are the systems that you're currently running, are they running mission critical business applications? Where does your data reside? Will it have an impact if we do go to the cloud, if we do re-platform? And what are the risks to get there? And all of these questions are around, what are the benefits and how do you measure those benefits? And again, this study is going to reveal the things you should think about and the pros and cons of doing one versus the other. So I first want to focus on what happens and the risk, and this is a real life example of re-platforming gone bad. Now, many stories hit the wire, some don't. This one went public because of the scope, because of the public aspect of both companies that were involved, but it could happen. I mean, this is an Oracle example, but frankly, it could happen anywhere. And I come from the ERP world, so I know full well, things can go badly. But here is a case where Suncorp, major banking financial institution, they were planning to re-platform their trusted Hogan core banking system for a new one from Oracle. And it turned out the newer technology couldn't replicate exactly what Hogan needed. What Suncorp needed. And ultimately it led to a $90 million impairment charge. $90 million. Now, some of you might work at companies that are a $90 million IT budget, but many of you do. And that was pretty significant. It also came with a change in leadership, CIO, and the banking chief. So, the key takeaways when you're looking at this is don't just fall into the market hype. Sure that whatever new platform you're looking at, actually feature for feature, capability versus capability, can replicate what you have in your existing platform. Don't just run to the cloud and fight. Another thing to remember when you're considering this is take whatever calculation you and your team have developed in terms of or total cost of ownership and add 4%. We've all done house projects. Every time you do a house overrun, no matter how good, how trusted your internet, your contractor is, going to be runs. And this data source, by the way, was from an 11 Harvard Business Review article. So it's a little old, but it's also well documented. And I think we all just experienced overruns. So you fill that in. And then you need to really look at, and this is something I'll talk about when we get to the IDC report itself, really investigate not just the capabilities of where you are going to go, but the capabilities of your existing platform. It was remarkable how little ending, especially some of the newer capabilities of both IBM I and IBM Z, that current users have around these platforms. And so we'll talk about that more as we go along. So here's a survey. So we surveyed 440 companies worldwide, across every region, multiple industries, and we split about half of them were in IBM I and about half were in IBM Z. And about half of each of those were either replatformers, in other words, moving off of the platform, typically to cloud or some system. And then the other half were modernizers that chose to stay in place, to invest in their existing infrastructure, their existing platforms. And the net takeaway of this report is that you can see on the screen kind of the three big metrics. And we'll deep dive on each one of these. Every category in terms of user satisfaction, the modernizers did better than the replatformers. Cost savings was also in favor of the modernizers. Lower cost, stay on the platform and invest versus replatforming. It's kind of one of those correlation causation things. So I'm not claiming that it is, I can't prove that it's causal. It was pretty consistent data that those that modernized, those companies saw higher revenue across the board, again, both in IBM I and IBM. And that's one of the reasons, by the way, that you can see the quote here, and this is from IDC, that these results demonstrated unequivocally that businesses that remain on, quote, legacy platform, by the way, it's in quotes because these really are incredibly modern platforms that invest in on a pretty significant basis. That these legacy have an overall better outcome than those that moved off of them. So let's dive first on the cost. So in terms of, this is one of the things that surprised us a little bit. We thought the transformation the transformation project to go to a different platform, of course, would cost money. Any transformation project costs money. But in an ongoing annual run rate, the costs were higher. Much of the efficiency can be explained with the built-in support and the expertise of the software that actually comes on the IBM Z and IBM I, something that the replatformers on distributed environments don't enjoy, and you have to pay extra money for these capabilities, either professional services or extra tooling. Furthermore, maintenance costs on the modernizers, so on the existing platform, you get leverage and scale over time, so the maintenance costs actually go down over time. What was also interesting, and this came out in some of the qualitative discussions, was that IDC shared with us that the cost could have actually been even lower for the modernizers if the modernizers actually modernized more often. So, we saw with COVID, the state of New Jersey, for example, ran into some significant issues, and other states as well in the United States, being able to handle all of the extra load on their systems for health benefits and other, high volume transactional volume on different systems related to COVID with benefits and access and those sort of things. And a number of municipalities just didn't spend enough time, in a consistent basis, investing in modernizing. So by the time they did choose to do that, there was a lot of catch up. There was a lot of technical debt to manage. The cost could have actually been even lower. And you see this across hardware, software, and the resulting revenue change, which I mentioned before. So from a cost perspective, again, it's really pretty significant. Now, when you take the cost savings, the question is, what do you do? Where do you apply it? And you can see on the right the categories of those elements that the companies that were interviewed on IBM I chose to invest in. So IoT, analytics, hybrid cloud, artificial intelligence, a lot of data related topics kind of fit the top here. What was really surprising was the relatively low interest or investment into open. And I'll give a little teaser. We'll see the same sort of feedback on the Z side as well. And I think our hypothesis anyway, and we're investigating this, is that this goes to a lot of lack of education that these platforms support open software. And it's actually one of the most incredible developments on the IBM mainframe in some time on Z. That it supports an open environment and open development and open tooling and languages. So we think it's a lack of education, but it was striking and interesting, but also striking. On the IBM Z side, it was again a similar focus on data plus, modernization of DevOps was another important topic, as well as Agile, and a clear focus on artificial intelligence, which of course ranked highest. Now, investments in artificial intelligence, go hand in hand with an organization's increasing ability to train AI algorithms, leveraging, the mission-critical data that sits on I, and it really enables what IDC terms as companies becoming intelligent enterprises. And then, of course, hybrid cloud and what we're seeing with hybrid cloud, and I don't know what you're experiencing in your companies, but what we're seeing with our customers and even ourselves is that it's really not an or proposition. There really is this notion of having some applications, some business processes, some tools that sit in the cloud. But more often than not, it is better to have the data sit on these platforms and have the applications come to the data. Have the applications, come to the data that's sitting on the platforms, as opposed to moving that data out for all sorts of reasons, from a data integrity, from security, from a latency perspective. And of course, you lose the ability to take advantage of the unbelievable compute power of these platforms as well. So again, there's lots of data here. There's even more data if you download the white paper or the report at the end, and I'll share with you how to do that. So I alluded to at the beginning, if you remember that slide that showed the user satisfaction, and in all 7 categories, and you can see what they are here, it's from web enablement to the ability to incorporate AI, to ease of finding and keeping talent, et cetera. And you could see down the line, consistently, all 7 categories, modernizers rated higher than replatformers. Every single one of them. One of the customers said, modernize without having to reinvent the wheel. Another indicated that for every dollar that they would have spent on replatforming, or on modernizing, they would spend at least $2 on replatforming. So, pretty unequivocal here in terms of the user satisfaction, and pretty consistent across the board. So that's kind of a quick recap of the IDC study. Again, download the report at the end. We'll tell you how. And I want to shift gears now just to talk a little bit about Rocket. I'm not going to spend too much time, but I'll try to keep things in the context of the data that I just shared with you. But at a very simple level, we look at a pretty basic formula around cost savings through automation and optimization, and that basically unleashes the ability to invest in all the things showed on these previous slides around DevOps and analytics and investing in hybrid cloud and artificial intelligence. And ultimately that results in better outcomes. And one case study that really, I think, highlights it for us was the work that we did at Rocket with a company called Safety Insurance. So it's founded in 1979, a leading property and casualty insurance provider in New England, in the United States. And they were running claims processing on IBM I. And they had a number of challenges in terms of being able to simplify day-to-day tasks. The renewals reps, and again, with insurance, renewals is the lifeblood of your business. And the renewals reps had to actually use a third-party application and systems to process the renewals. And that system was frankly difficult to use, and you had to go to different screens. There were poor response times. And frankly, the younger employees looked at these antiquated systems and we're getting frustrated and frankly we're leaving. So you had a high turnover of the IT staff, and it was just not working well. Ultimately, they ended up working with Rocket, with a couple of our products, including Rocket API, as well as our terminal emulation product portfolio. And you can see the results here. They converted green screens to a modern GUI and all the other benefits around improved performance on the renewals process, and more important, or equally importantly, a better customer experience, but also employee retention. And I think we've all seen the challenge of attracting and retaining employees. So, at a very simple level, on the left, you see, for lack of a better description, what we think of Rocket as our technology stack. And every company's got their own version of the stack. And I'm not going to share examples and data from every layer of the stack, just a couple of them, just to kind of give you a flavor of the way that we think about things. And frankly, you can start working with Rocket or any company at any layer of the stack. So you don't have to start at the bottom and kind of work your way up. A lot of these are symbiotic. A lot of these are dependent upon one another. So again, you can start anywhere. At its core, in the infrastructure layer, we think about this as just foundational, how efficient, how scalable, what is the performance, what is the cost structure of your underlying platform? Are you taking advantage of all the capability? And are you sharing workloads so there isn't latency if there is a spike in demand with COVID, or if you're a retailer and it's it's a holiday season, etc. Can your systems intelligently share that workload across the board, visibility into that. And even within this infrastructure, one of the things that we do at Rocket is we try to build in what we try to infuse artificial intelligence. We don't think of ourselves as an AI company per se, but our products have artificial intelligence kind of infused in them. And that's kind of a philosophical approach that we take to product development. So really, we think about it as kind of tangible AI. And one real world example, if you're running, let's go back to claims processing. If you're running like a claims entry application that is accessing, a DB2 database, and it suffers from slow response time, say because workload contention or a poorly organized table, pick your core issue. Our solutions can alert you before the problem escalates into an end user, or worse yet, a customer. So this learning of being able to identify issues, even at the infrastructure layer early on, allows you to create solutions and identify it before it becomes a problem across the entire platform and across the business process, no matter what that might be. The open layer. So, I talked about a little bit about this before, but for us, open source is delivering perhaps the biggest wave of innovation to the IBM platform in decades. Open source is becoming essential in the development of mission critical application software, and IBM and Rocket have been working on enabling this through the Open Mainframe project, and other initiatives like Zoe, where we actually just launched the first terminal emulator on the Zoe framework. So we're porting the most popular open source packages to make IBM Z and IBM I, frankly, just another platform for your DevOps infrastructure. It's just one of many platforms that you can leverage AI open on. So this will in turn attract the innovative developers and younger developers in your organization, and maintain them or retain them to develop the best business outcomes for you and your team. And so together we're bringing modern DevOps, IT, and data science to IBM platforms, I and Z, to innovate on the technologies that they prefer as a customer, without compromising either security or privacy. And last but certainly not least is hybrid cloud. And I've been watching a lot of sports on the weekends, and if you have been watching any sports, you've seen IBM's advertisements on TV around hybrid cloud. They're obviously a big believer in it, and so are we. I mean, our data show and what we're seeing with our customers is truly a hybrid environment, working with the hyperscalers, but keeping the data on the platforms because of all of the reliability, the data integrity, the data richness, and the ability to do all the compute within the platform as opposed to in a distributed environment. So we're really seeing that in a hybrid cloud environment. So with that, I hope you found today's presentation informative. Again, we had surveyed 440 customers, and the results were pretty consistent across I and Z. That at the end of the day, modernizing in place and investing in your current systems is a better proposition from a innovation perspective, from a growth perspective, from a cost perspective, and from a usability and internal IT resource satisfaction perspective. So with that, Ian, I am done with my prepared remarks, and hopefully we have some questions, and I'd be happy to take those now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. You can send in questions through the chat. The chat button is on the left frame of your screen. Actually, yes, the chat frame is on the left frame of your screen, and maybe on the overlay at the top of your screen, and select to send to all panelists. This first question, Jeff, is for people considering modernizing their legacy systems, where do you suggest they begin?
Good question. As I mentioned in one of the slides that I shared, you don't need to start in any particular layer. So it really, I hate to sound like a consultant, it depends. But you can start at open, you can start at the infrastructure layer. One of the interesting things about open is that almost every company is leveraging open in some form or fashion, but there is some hesitancy because a lot of the open tools aren't supported. And so with the ability to support some of those open tools and languages, that's an interesting place because your IT shops, your developers are interested and they're already using these tools. So open, I think, is a great place to start. Another place would be the core infrastructure layer, because that is a place that we have seen with every single customer. Every customer that we work with who starts there can generate cost savings immediately. There's optimization, there's visibility and transparency to reduce costs immediately within the platform. So those would be two places. But again, you can start anywhere. No one would say that you're dumb if you're going to look at security to make sure that your IT and cybersecurity protocols are important. That would also be a wise place to start.
Okay, this next one is, there's an idea out there, cloud companies are saying data storage software on IBM I and Z can't handle the volume and flexibility or the NoSQL databases today. What are the best ways to sort of argue against that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about these platforms that IBM and others have sold on and have seen a lot of success is their scalability. I mean, it's for those exact reasons that just the pure compute power and efficiency of IBM I and IBM Z. I mean, that's one of the reasons they've both been around for literally decades. And that over 70% of the Fortune 500 still use them for mission critical applications. And there are certainly some applications and some platforms, per the question, where it may not require an investment into mainframe, and there are some applications that could be run equally well, outside of that platform in a more cost-efficient way. For example. But if it's a high compute, high transaction, mission critical, then I think those platforms have worn the test of time pretty well.
Okay. There is a chat question from Nick. Nick, I think you are missing a noun. You omitted a noun, so I'm not quite sure what you're
I have faith,
asking.
Ian. I have faith that you can fill it in. Or maybe Nick can.
Actually, I don't believe I can. Do you recommend an in-depth evaluation of the current before beginning a modernization? Yeah.
I'm going to guess platform.
Yeah, maybe.
Yes. If it is platform, then yes. I mean, that was one of the findings that we had with the study, which was there was a lot of time and effort looking at the new tool or the new platform to replace. But there were just assumptions made, again, because that's why we use legacy, the term legacy, because there's a perception that these platforms are old and they're antiquated and there hasn't been investment. And you could look at IBM's quarterly reports and look at what they are investing and where. These are the most modern platforms in the world. And so they are investing in artificial intelligence, in a hybrid cloud, cybersecurity, and making sure that those features are part and parcel of these platforms. So even if you have a trajectory that you're going to go modernize or that you're going to replatform, actually spend the time to investigate where you've already invested and where you already are seeing success, where your employees are already trained, before you make that jump. And again, I'm hoping you were meaning the word platform, Nick.
He actually meant systems, but platform is close enough. I think the answer would have been the same.
Yeah.
All right, more questions, send them in through chat. And this next question, Jeff. In the report in your slides, you mentioned a lack of awareness around new technologies available on the platforms. Can you give a couple examples of what we're not aware of?
Sure. A couple of the things, I talked about open first, and I'm not going to belabor that point anymore, but certainly there was a lack of understanding and awareness of open. And I would say the other area that we saw the least awareness or understanding was artificial intelligence. And part of that, frankly, is that AI, there's still a little bit of a buzzword, Gartner hype cycle kind of sense of artificial intelligence where, and I don't have the data handy, but I think we've all kind of looked at survey data with artificial intelligence in terms of, are you considering using artificial intelligence? And the vast majority of respondents are saying, yes, we are in the next 6, 12, 18 months. Have you deployed artificial intelligence? That number gets a lot lower. Do you have artificial intelligence deployed across your entire enterprise and have a full understanding? When asked those questions, that number gets really, really small. So it's not a complete surprise that artificial intelligence and what capabilities and support IBM Z and IBM I have to get you up the AI ladder, so to speak. So that wasn't really a surprise, but that was another area certainly where there was a lot of education that not just IBM but all of us that live, support, and work around these platforms have to do a better job. Frankly, myself included, as Chief Marketing Officer at Rocket, had to do a better job really explaining all the capabilities in these platforms.
Okay. In your survey, for the people who did platform, how many were going to the cloud?
So again, the split was about 50-50 between I and Z, and then within that, about 50-50 of modernizers versus replatformers. And within the replatformers, that was we didn't specify between cloud and just any distributed platform. So we internalized that as there's going to be a cloud element to that. So it was about half of those in the study that went to the cloud in some form or fashion.
Okay. This is a database question. Should database modernization and database decoupling be an essential part of the modernization project?
That's a tough question. And that is, you look at the relationship between the database and the platform. Those are obviously very, very tightly coupled. And I think when you look to replatform or move off of a system or a platform like I or Z, without looking at the database, no matter what database you may be on, DB2 or Oracle or whatever database, that has to be part and parcel of that conversation, because the implications of where the data resides, how it's managed, how it's accessed, is absolutely critical. So yes, for sure, those need to be considered as part of any conversation.
All right, last chance, folks. You can send in your questions through the chat. Select to send to panelists. Giving folks a couple seconds to send in final questions. While we're waiting for that, I will say that we did have a question about the replay and the slide deck that you presented from. Yes, those will be available from the Common Learning Management System. I will send out an email to everybody when that will be available. Just takes a bit of time to render the video. It should be available from tomorrow morning that you can get that email and download the handouts. This next question, and perhaps the last one, Jeff, was back to the study that you talked about, the satisfaction rates you showed between replatformers and modernizers. While better for modernizers, all look similarly near or above 4. So why is modernizing better?
So that's something we talked a lot about with IDC, because we noticed that as well. And they do a ton of surveys, and basically they typically all answers fall between 3 and 4.5. Right? No one responds with 1s and 2s. That's quite rare. So the ratings lower than a 3 basically means that the customer is literally abandoning or likely to have already abandoned the technology. So the closer to 3 is weaker much weaker satisfaction level, and over 4 connotes a much higher satisfaction level and performance. So if you think about the scale was 1 through 5, but really 1 and 2 don't come into account. And this was not specific just for this survey. So the differences of 0.2 and 0.4 within that scale are actually pretty significant. So that's that's why there was a big difference. And if you look at the consistency, where literally modernizers in all 7 categories were more satisfied, and the cost, again, consistently across the platforms, several percentage points difference in cost. So so we feel pretty solid about the data.
All right, great. This seems like a good place to end. Jeff, thank you for your time. Everybody in the audience, have a great day. Nice presentation, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian.
All right,
Bye-bye.
everybody have a good day.